All right, History 102 students, let's talk about the course website and let's talk about the course syllabus a little bit in the spirit of trying to open up additional time while we're in class to actually talk with one another. So, this is what the website looks like. If you were in a Canvas site last semester, probably looks real familiar. The homepage is essentially a gateway to the other stuff that you need. Zoom, of course, is how you find your classroom. So you click on Zoom and then it's moving slow. Pick the date, click join. That's simple enough. Announcements, self explanatory. They'll also show up on the homepage and they should probably show up in your email too. Course syllabus we'll talk about in a minute. The modules I'll talk about in a minute too. Discussion boards. Probably not going to be any discussion boards in this class. We're doing this to be interactive and face to face. If there's discussion boards, it's because I'm sick or because something's going on. Um, Grades, you'll be able to see your grades when you actually have grades. Easy enough. Let's talk about the modules for just a second. There's a few different modules in here. Modules are just folders with stuff in them, right? So the welcome begin here, that's basically from IT. The resources for students for Canvas, if you've never used Canvas before, they're worth going through. And then you've got the student resources for online stuff. The main thing I think you want to check out is the LCSE Writing Center. We'll talk more about that later. Actually, that's not the main thing you want to check out. The main thing you want to pay attention to is this module called History 102 week by week. And what's going to happen in this is that every week you're going to see two different things. One of them is going to have basically the agenda for the week, and I'm going to be building that as we go. Okay, you only see one of them in there right now. I've got a second one that's close to go, ready to go, but they're just kind of getting built out as I can. I'll show you one of them in a second. And then you got this other thing called notes by peers. Each day there's going to be an opportunity for somebody to get some extra credit by posting their notes for the class. I like to see them. Other students like to see them. You guys should have some practice posting notes. And in order to do that, you guys should all be able to edit it. So we'll appoint somebody and you'll just post your notes. This has some instructions for note taking in general. You should have half a page of notes on each of the documents you read in the class. We'll talk about why in just a little bit. And there is a video here basically kind of explaining how to take notes if you need it. So note taking. Let's go to the modules, the rest of the modules though. When you get inside, you'll see a Tuesday. I know you can't really see the Thursday. It's okay though. The Tuesday and the Thursday, and it tells you what the agendas are for the day, what you're supposed to have read by that day. Let me switch to my view because I want to show you something in the modules. Week 2. I'm still building it, but I wanted to show it to you. In each of the modules, there's going to be at least one video. There might be a couple of videos, but typically they'll just be one 10-minute video shot by me, probably down here in my basement office, helping to set up the readings from this book. So the one that you're looking at right now is the setup for chapter 15. Chapter 15 has 5 documents. The documents are not hard to read, but if you don't know what you're looking for, it might not be clear why you're reading them. So the 10-minute video that is set up here is set up to provide you with some context for how to take notes, what you're supposed to be getting out of the readings, okay? Ignore these things at your own risk. These are the videos telling you how to do your readings, all right? So You'd be smart to watch him before you started to read. Okay, now let's talk about what we all came here for, the course syllabus. And on Sunday, I was having trouble getting the syllabus to come up in the student view. So I'm going to assume that's been fixed by now. We'll see. So the syllabus, it's a virtual remote course. We've already talked about that. We're meeting by Zoom. The first stuff is just contact information. I'd really appreciate it if you use Canvas's inbox to email to me. I'm the kind of guy that likes to keep things in little compartments, and my class Canvas website is the good compartment for my correspondence with you. My phone number, that goes to the office phone. You're most likely going to go straight to voicemail, which is fine because the voicemail goes straight to my regular phone. But you can go ahead and call if you want. Leave me a message. My virtual office and all my office hours this semester are going to be through Zoom. This is my room. You are welcome to dial the numbers of that Zoom room and see if I'm in there anytime you want. Just like you would be welcome to drop by my office, and if the door happens to be open, come on in. But don't count on it. Don't wait around for me very long. When you know I'm going to be in the office are during my office hours. And my office hours are Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays from 10:30 to 11:30. Now I realize that's not extensive, but it's enough, okay? Because I'm also available by appointment a whole lot of other times. So I realize some of y'all have jobs, you got other classes, 10:30 to 11:30's not going to cut it for you. Send me a note. You want to meet at 8 o'clock in the morning. You want to meet at 8 o'clock at night. I'm all right with that. Not too late, but I'm all right off business hours. But we can make appointments at other times. That's how to get in contact with me. One other thing about office hours, I strongly encourage every one of you to show up during my office hours once during the first 2 weeks, 3 weeks of class, just to introduce yourself. Just establish a connection between us. When you don't want anything, it'll make it a whole lot easier when there's a problem and you have questions to ask me about them. And, just show up and say, hey, you said I should drop by. I'll take it from there. We'll talk to each other for like 5 minutes and that'll be it. So anyway, office hours. Course descriptions. We got the course description from the catalog and we got my course description. You guys can read that. I'll give you a different course description here on this video. The history of the world since 1500. That's a lot of stuff. So we're going to have to be selective and figure out what it is that we're actually going to talk about. So we are going to look at some of the trends, some of the processes, some of the things that happened over the course of the last 500 years that impact the entire species, the big stuff. All right, that's what we're going to use as our criteria. So if we were photographers, most of the history you've taken has been, probably with a telephoto lens, the history of America, the history of Idaho, history of Japan, whatever. We're going to look at, and those are really useful if what you want to do is look at the development of a nation state or look at what happens between one particular geographic region, but not very useful for things like looking at the history of a disease, for example, or the history of migratory peoples. So we're going to be using stuff where you got to have big comparative histories. You got to look at the history of more than one place at a time. So you guys get used to thinking about in comparisons. We're gonna work a lot with that. looking at what happens with sustained contact between old and new worlds, looking at what happens with new trade connections, looking at the role of industrialization and capitalism, looking at what happens when we switch worldviews to a scientific worldview, um, looking at the process of the some of the processes of the 20th century. Um, it's fun stuff. We'll get into that more. It's a tough description other than we are going to look at the big global trends over the last 500 years. And the underlying assumption is that in today's, in the 21st century, in the globalized world, it's critical that you know something about this stuff. They're still playing themselves out. In addition to all that kind of stuff, I really want to emphasize how to come up with your own historical conclusions and how to learn history, right? I like to have a bit of a lab component, and the lab component really comes from this to where you guys are reading the sources, you're reading the raw data, and you're trying to come up with your own conclusions. I think that's very important. So for the hour and 15 minutes twice a week that we're together, you guys are historians. We're going to work on developing historical thinking skills because we're not going to be able to cover everything. And what I want y'all to be able to do is when you're finished with this class, you kind of have some ideas about, you kind of have the outline of the jigsaw puzzle, and you kind of have some ideas about what parts of the jigsaw puzzles look like, but you have ideas about how you should go about filling it out. All right? We'll talk more about those in class. Gen Ed. You know what? There's a whole lot of stuff here about Gen Ed. I've been the chair of Gen Ed a couple of times. I've served on the committee a few times. I'll try to be brief about it because you guys are going to hear about Gen Ed maybe more than you expected to in this class. I think Gen Ed is important. I think general education is important. What kind of things should a person know to be considered generally educated? And you should certainly have some kind of an idea of the history of the human species in order to be considered generally educated. And in the process of that, the stuff that you learn in this class, not only in terms of content, but also upping your writing skills, upping your thinking skills, upping your presentation skills, they're going to make you a better whatever major you are. All right, whatever major you are, this class is going to make you a better that major. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. This is all my Gen Ed stuff. Let's talk about the required readings, the assignments. That's really what may be on people's minds. Only one book for the class. This one right here, Worlds of History. Make sure you get volume 2. All right, volume 1 I use for the first half of the class. Make sure you got volume 2. And make sure you got the 6th edition. There's 7 editions floating around out there, and they don't all work. Now, there are also something like 50 copies of this book available for long-term checkout at the library for free. And it's on a first come, first served basis. Go over there, tell them you want the book for this class. Otherwise, go to wherever your favorite online bookseller is and get you a good deal. This one should not break the bank. It's an older version. But you will need the book, and you will need the book starting next week. So get on that. So here's the thing about how this book is going to be used. You're going to need this book every day when you come to class. This book is an edited book. It is, I don't know how many different documents are in here. 100 or more. It's divvied up into chapters that, are roughly going to be some of the big things in world history that we're going to look at. Overseas expansion in the 15th century, the connections between the old world and the new world, the scientific revolution. I'm just kind of looking through a couple of quick things here. The Enlightenment, the development of capitalism. And each one of those topics has got anywhere from 5 to 10 different documents. And the documents, some of them are secondary sources. We're going to talk about this. Stuff that someone like me might write, what a historian would write. And some of them are primary sources. Stuff from the time we're talking about. A letter from Christopher Columbus, for example. And we're going to use that as our data. All right, our data to make our own interpretations about history. So this whole class is about talking about the material in this book, historical data. All right. Now, how are we going to do that? The additional resources, how to write an email. You guys take a look at those things, right? Let's talk about your grades. Something like 20% of your overall grade is going to be based on 4 easy thought pieces. We'll talk a little bit more about them as the time comes. 2 to 3 pages using evidence. I'll give you a question in advance, but the whole thing is writing about in your thought pieces the documents that we read. 4 map quizzes. Doesn't do us any good to talk about ancient China if we can't find it on the map. Or not ancient, Ming China in this case. I've toned down some of the number of questions. Some of y'all who've had me for History 101 might like that. I cut those in half. But we need to have some geographical knowledge. We'll talk about that. Random pop quizzes over assigned readings. I hate to use it, but my experience has been that people don't only respond to the carrot. Sometimes you have to have the stick. I hate the pop quizzes, but we got to use them. The pop quizzes, you should expect a pop quiz whenever. I try not to be too tricky with the pop quizzes. I try to make the quizzes, basically, if you did the reading, you get 100. And if you didn't, you get 0. I will always allow you to use your notes. If you have written notes on your documents, you will always be allowed to use them on the pop quizzes. Keep that in mind. And then your first take-home essay. And the criteria, the assignment itself is already up in the assignments. And the take-home essay, it's a souped-up thought piece. You can call it a research paper if you want. 4 to 6 pages. That's all I'm looking for. 4 to 6 pages. We're going to do 2 of them. 4 to 6 pages. And the only documents you're allowed to use are the documents in here. So the way that the class is going to work, you're going to read the documents before you come to class, and you're going to take notes on them. You're going to come to class, and we're going to talk about those documents in whatever way you want. Once in a while, you're going to show up to class with a thought piece written about some of these documents. And we're going to talk about it at a slightly higher level. And then twice during the semester, you're going to write a formal essay in which you pick a question or you come up with one. We'll talk about that when the time comes. And you basically do a research paper using the first half of the book for the first one and the second half of the book for the second one. That's all there is to it. I try to use it as an integrated system. Let me just kind of flip through here. What else we have? You guys can go through grading scale. Oh, this whole business about bringing your kid to class, right? I don't know about with the virtual class, huh? That's more for when we've got the classroom scene going on. I'll talk to you about matters of courtesy and those kinds of things. Yeah, you know what? I think that's all I have to say about the syllabus. It is, you guys go through it, take a good look at it. and we will talk about it more in class. All right, see you around campus.